Hi, it's Gerry, and welcome to day 116 of A Course in Miracles. Today we review lessons 101 and 102. Lesson 101 is, God's will for me is perfect happiness. And related to that, lesson 102 is, I share God's will for happiness for me. They tie in very much together. Lesson 101 continues. Oh, and I should note too, God's will, capital W. So that I think means that it's divine, God's divine will for me, that there is a divine purpose for my life, which is a beautiful and wonderful thing. God's will is perfect happiness for me, and I can suffer, but from the belief there is another will apart from His. So it's, I think, just trusting in God, and we cause ourselves suffering when we don't trust in God. I may have goals, and if I believe that they are what God is calling me to, I'm going to get there. Now, the way that I get there might not be the way that I think I should, but that's, and if I get frustrated with that, I am causing my own suffering. You know, like I felt very much called to get married and have a family. That doesn't mean that every woman I asked out said yes, but it does mean that the woman I ended up with was the one I'm meant to be with, and that's a good and beautiful thing. The other lesson is, I share God's will for happiness for me. So here, the inclusive language got a little bit clumsy, so I'm going to just go with what it said in the text for the most part. I share my Father's will for me, His child. What God has given me is all I want. What God has given me is all there is. So in other words, don't worry. And, look at the lilies of the field. God provides. Everything is going to be fine. Trust in Him. And, I think that's the biggest difference I find in myself since I started this course. Like, I do feel very much called to reach out to the world with a message of peace and love. I know that I'm a gifted writer. I walked to work and I ran into a friend of mine on my way to work. And he said, Gerry, you have such a way of explaining concepts so that people can understand them. Like, what a wonderful thing for somebody to say. And I hope it's the same with this Course in Miracles. I know this is the next step. This is God's will. But what becomes of it is it's just a matter of trusting in God, for God's divine timing when this reaches hundreds, thousands, millions of people. That's not my worry. I'm just doing what I need to do. And I rejoice in that. I find joy in that because I know that I'm following God's will. I was teaching my class today about the First Nations 7 grandfather teachings of humility, honesty, respect, wisdom, truth, love, and there's one more, courage. And I said to them, when you reach a confusing time in life, when you're not sure what to do, you can always ask yourself, is this the respectful thing to do? Is this the loving thing to do? Is this the wise thing to do? Is this leading to truth? And when you do that, you always find God's will. And that's been the teaching of the sages throughout the millennial, regardless of their, was that the word millennials? Anyhow, For thousands of years, that's been the teaching of the sages. And there's a reason for that, because that's how we find God's will. So those are my reflections for today. And I feel so blessed to be speaking with you and teaching this and discussing this with you. Thank you so much for joining me. You really are a blessing, and be a blessing in everyone's life. That's what God's will is. And all will be well. Things will turn out the way that it's meant to be. Rejoice in God's will for your life. And we'll talk more tomorrow. Gerry out.